All right, we've got an absolutely jam-packed episode for you guys on Carving Up Live on this Wednesday night. Going to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles' pretty ugly win, 10-7 on the road against the Green Bay Packers. Why Philadelphia, they are so strange, man. They might just be the weirdest great team in any sport that I've ever seen in my life. Talk about that. Also, why Green Bay is in some big trouble, not just with their quarterback, but potentially with their head coach, Matt LaFleur, as well. Get into that. Also, talk about Nico Harrison. The long national nightmare is over for Mavs fans as Nico has been fired as GM of the team after making the worst trade in NBA history. Talk about that. Carving up the context, again, from time to time, delve into politics. I've been told and I've been lectured and educated over the last decade or so that people want politics out of their sports, and yet the last few days maybe have shown me a little bit something different in the other direction. Talk about that. Bryson's best 10, my top 10 teams in the National Football League. And at the end of today's show, Jets, Patriots, big game in the AFC East tomorrow. New England trying to win their 8th game in a row. Carving Up is loaded on a Wednesday night. So let's drop the beat, baby. Here we go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving Up Live right here on YouTube as well as on X, IG, Twitch, Facebook. We're pretty much everywhere at this point. Appreciate everybody for stopping by on a Wednesday. It's a 1-week anniversary of Carving It Up on Twitch. Gotten some good feedback on there, so we really appreciate it. Again, subscribe and follow all my social media platforms. See my IG, my X, TikTok, Twitch, same thing as YouTube. Carving Up with Bryson Carver, of course. Hit that big red subscribe button right down there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel as it helps us grow exponentially. Hit the notification bell, the whole bit. We've got tons to talk about. You heard the open to start the show. I was this close. I'll admit, folks, I was that close to putting in a segment talking about my Warriors getting absolutely clobbered last night against the Oklahoma City Thunder. I thought, though, just for ratings purposes for this show, that maybe you guys wouldn't be as compelled for that segment as you would be for some football stuff. And so I decided, I'll push that to the side today. But no, that was really bad from start to finish. Warriors got clobbered. Good news is, listen, Steph was sick. Steph's still not feeling 100%. All right, the Draymond quote after the game, I must admit, was concerning. I didn't love it. But either way, it's November. There's a long way to go. But Oklahoma City looks unbelievable through the first 12 games this season. Enough basketball, okay? Enough Warriors looking bad last night. Let's talk some football. But first, I don't know if I've ever seen a team in any sport. I'm 22 years old, so I know in the scheme of things, I'm still a young old whippersnapper. I get it. I don't know if in my life watching sports, I've ever seen a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. Never seen it like any team like it, where it's, okay, we're 9 games into the season. We're halfway through the season. They're the defending champions. They cruised to a Super Bowl last year outside of a little bit of a hiccup. I don't want to say hiccup because they won the game, but, barely survived the Rams at home, smoked Green Bay, smoked Washington, smoked KC in the Super Bowls. We all remember. Now they're 7-2. They're the 1 seed in the NFC. Everything should be feeling great. And yet we come away after Monday night. Okay, not Jalen Hurts' best game, but hey, Green Bay's a great defense. We'll talk about the Packers in about 10 minutes or so. Hurts didn't have his best game, but made the big play when it mattered, and that's what Jalen Hurts, I've said it for a while, has always done. Big throw to Devontae Smith to really kind of create a lot of separation between Green Bay and Philly. Right? The defense, which had gotten off to a really rough start this season, looks like they're back. The Jalen Phillips edition, which I pointed out on the show last week, was the least talked about big trade of the deadline. He was wreaking havoc on Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers on Monday night. Right, Nick Sirianni has his guys ready to go, at least defensive guys ready to go, and all these things seem to be going for Philadelphia. They've got maybe the best roster in the league, and they play, by the way, all of a sudden, maybe the easiest division in the league, that of the NFC South, right? And we sit over here looking today, it's like, okay, A.J. Brown is going on video game streams, calling out people who have him on fantasy saying, hey, drop me. I am not getting the football. More on A.J. Brown just a second. You got Nick Sirianni, who I've been lukewarm on for a while. I've always said about Sirianni, listen, he deserves massive credit for establishing a culture in Philadelphia. I've said it since the Super Bowl. You can't like Dan Campbell and hate Nick Sirianni. They're cut from the same cloth. And by the way, Sirianni's got a ring to show for it. But it is, I've said even after they won the Super Bowl, and I gave him credit for being an excellent coach, the thing that he struggles with the most is clock/game management. Bruh, the heck you doing going for him 4th down and 6? There's 30 seconds left of the game. You're up 3. The game is over. Punt the football. Don't kick a field goal. People are like, kick the field goal up 6. No. Punt the ball. Put Green Bay inside their own 10, worst case scenario. Now they got to go, what, 60 yards, or based on Brandon McManus's kick, like 70 yards just to get in the field goal range? Bruh, what are you doing going for? Are you trying to appease A.J. Brown? Oh, that was that could have cost Philly the game, because Green Bay had a functional offense, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. If Green Bay was able to get anything going offensively, get in field goal range, McManus ties it, sends it to OT, and the Packers win, we're crushing Sirianni on this show. Reminds me of a decision he made on Monday Night Football last year against Atlanta back in week 2 when he decided to throw the ball instead of running the football and decided to kick a field goal instead of go for it. Just, again, bad clock/game management. And in Philadelphia, 7-2. Yet they are the best team in the NFC once again. You'll see where I've got them on Bryson's best 10. Got them pretty highly ranked. And then there's the A.J. Brown piece of it, where, man, I was, not a lot of people picked up on this, but I know there's some, like, I don't like watching the game with sound. I prefer to watch the game with sound. If Buck and Aikman are calling, I'm definitely watching the game with the sound. Like, I almost wish the Manning brothers did a different game on Sunday, because I do enjoy Joe and Troy. They've done an amazing job for 2 decades. And there was a moment where Troy Aikman talks about, we had a conversation with Jalen Hurts yesterday and his relationship with A.J. Brown. And he said, listen, we're going to be professional. We're showing up. He wants to win. I want to win, all of it. And Joe Buck kind of quips, and I don't know if Aikman necessarily loved it, but Buck's kind of like, yeah, I wish you could say the second part of what he said. It's like, what did he say? And it goes to something that Brandon Graham said last year. It goes to a number of things where these two clearly aren't close friends. As much as I think that's a problem, they weren't friends last year and they won the Super Bowl. I don't think, listen, folks are like, oh, is Jalen Hurts trying to sabotage A.J. Brown? Because A.J. Brown's one of the 5 best receivers in the game. Certainly one of the 5 most talented, right? Great hands, great route runner, speed, all of it. Can win, on contested catches, one-on-one against DBs. He's one of the best in the game. Could potentially put together a Hall of Fame type resume. Anyone that is suggesting, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, they got a beef, which, by the way, I think they do. I don't know if I go so far as say beef, but they clearly don't get along. Jalen Hurts is trying to sabotage A.J. Brown's stats, and therefore that is why A.J. Brown's not getting the ball. That, to me, would go against everything that we've ever known Jalen Hurts to be since his freshman year at Alabama. At least since we, the national media / fans, have known him as, which is, hasn't the argument for Jalen Hurts as an elite quarterback been, hey, makes the plays that wins the games. Doesn't care how he's got to do it. He does it. So by that definition, if A.J. Brown's open, if A.J. Brown's got opportunities down the field, I'm getting the football to A.J. Brown. Folks, the Philadelphia Eagles have a Kevin Patullo problem. And I think it's undeniable at this point, is that it's kind of like I asked the question about the Denver Broncos last Friday. It's like, yeah, this Denver roster is excellent. I trust the coach. The defense is unbelievable. Great O-line. Receivers, you could use a little bit of upgrade, but Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims could do worse. Running game's great with R.J. Harvey, J.K. Dobbins. If you're a Broncos fan, you think Denver's going to get eliminated before the Super Bowl, why do you think that'll be? Bo Nix. If you think Philadelphia's going to get eliminated prior to or in the Super Bowl, they lose the Super Bowl potentially if they go back like they did last year, who's it going to be? The OC, Kevin Patullo. Because let's show A.J. Brown's numbers this season, because they're obviously shockingly low. All right, tied for 61st in catches. That's unbelievable. 50th in receiving yards, tied for 36 in yards per catch, tied for 45th in receiving touchdowns, and he is 49th this season in terms of receiving yards per game. So A.J. Brown has been a non-factor this year for the Eagles. And by the way, they're 7-2. That's why I made the point. Hey, maybe more trouble than he's worth, kind of a headache. You could get great trade value for him because he's a great player. Philadelphia, I think you should move him. I said that a month ago. They didn't. He's an Eagle for the rest of 2025. We'll see beyond this season. But this feels like just basic coaching. Listen, I can't necessarily pin this on Sirianni because Sirianni's the head coach. Sirianni does not call plays. Sirianni, that is not his strong suit. Again, managing the game, I don't know if it's necessarily a strong suit either, but getting his guys ready to go, kind of, again, cut from the Dan Campbell cloth. If you're Kevin Patullo, this is inexcusable. I know Green Bay has a great defense. I know Green Bay has a great pass rush. But, bruh, it's been 15 days since your last game. You're coming off of a bye. You're coming off of the game, by the way, in which your offense looked awesome without A.J. Brown in the lineup. Talked about it the next day on the show. Maybe get him the football a little bit. Now, Kevin Patullo might, behind closed doors, tell you, man, we can get him 10, 12 catches like we did against Minnesota. Jalen Hurts is a perfect passer rating. We throw it all over the field, and it still doesn't matter. He's still pissed off. Fine, but you put the ball into his court from there. is that if you look at A.J. Brown, listen, this has been 4 straight different offensive coordinators for Philadelphia from 2022 to now. Look at A.J. Brown's production year by year and how it is. It's went down the last 2 years, 23 and 24, compared to his first year, 2022, when obviously the best Eagles coordinator they've had in the Sirianni era, Shane Steichen, was there. Beyond that, look how they plummeted this year in 2025. Go ahead and show those numbers. Is that A.J. Brown this season? Do we have it? I think we've got it on the screen right there. A.J. Brown this season. 3 touchdowns, 3.9 catches per game, 51 yards per game. So that's down from 2022, he had 11 touchdowns. The 2 years after that, 7 touchdowns. This year, 3. Again, the season's not over, but he's not on pace to eclipse that, certainly. 5 catches, 6 catches, 5 catches, 4 catches. 88 yards, 85 yards, 83 yards, 51 yards. Is A.J. Brown a head case? Is he a headache for Jalen Hurts, for offensive coaching staffs? No question about it. But the fact of the matter is, Howie Roseman, I'm sure with the consent of Nick Sirianni, and Howie Roseman, we know he knows what he's doing, best GM in the league, they didn't move him. A.J. Brown's an Eagle for the rest of the year. So you got to find a way to get him involved. In a game where Green Bay, by the way, aside from the big play to Saquon was a non-factor. Heck, everybody was a non-factor, except for one Devontae Smith play and Jalen Hurts delivering the ball to him. It's not like Philadelphia, okay, they got 10 points, they got 14 the first half, and they're like, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, until Green Bay adjusts, until Jeff Hafley, the Packers DC, adjusts. No, you were scoreless. In the first half, you scored 10 in the game. So I thought that was a strange game plan by Kevin Patullo. And again, by no means am I saying, oh, Eagles are out of contention. Because to be real, I didn't like their offensive coordinator last year, Kellen Moore, and they still won it. Kevin Patullo is worse than Kellen Moore. The O-line's production has declined, although I did think they were solid against Micah Parsons, that Packers pass rush, although Micah did make a few plays, contrary to what some disgruntled Cowboys fans will tell you. But Saquon hasn't been close to the player he was last year. Is that a fatigue issue for Saquon? I don't know. He's coming off a bye. You'd think he'd be a little bit more, rejuvenized. And so, I mean, the only guy that I feel like has been relatively consistent is Devontae Smith. Outside of that, A.J. Brown in and out of the game plan. Week 1 against Dallas, this week, it's been very strange. And again, if A.J. got 10 targets, caught 6, Eagles win and blow, and A.J. is still whining to the media, as he's been prone to do, that's on him. At least you got him the football. At least you put yourself in position in terms of your relationship with A.J. Brown, in terms of your productivity as an offense to be successful. So, but guess what? They're 7-2. And Jalen Hurts, talked about it after the game, it's hard to win in this league. It's hard to win on the road, especially at Lambeau at night, Monday Night Football. And he talked about the resilience of the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday.
It's a big time win. That's a big testament to our team. Defense played lights out. Lights out. I mean, won the situational battle. Showed up in the end of the game when we could have avoided putting them in that position. But, I feel like when there was a mishap, we had each other's backs. And that's all you can ask for. And so I'm proud of how we competed. I'm proud of how we weathered through and persevered. I think we showed great resilience.
Listen, you never apologize for winning the NFL, and Jalen Hurts is kind of saying that. Hey, we beat a really good team on the road in their building on prime time off a bye. That's a win. We're still first in our division by a mile. We're going to cruise to the NFC East. Thing is, can we get the 1 seed? Right? Is the road to Super Bowl the road to Super Bowl 60 go through Philadelphia as it did last year thanks to the 1 seed Detroit Lions losing? We want to be in control of that. And so, but I listen, I know Jalen and AJ clearly are not the best of friends, clearly do not get along. I would be, at this point, quite surprised if AJ Brown is a Philadelphia Eagle in week 1 of 2026. I'd be really surprised. Not shocked, but at this point, it feels like that relationship, his role in the offense is kind of beyond salvageable. So it feels like it's only a matter of time. A lot of Patriots fans are like, hey, we'd love to have him, right? Mike Vrabel, history with him in Tennessee, give him to Drake May. Now he's got a respect to Stephon Diggs, but now he's got a true blue, top, elite wide receiver number 1. I think it's a great fit in New England. Certainly more so than it is in Philadelphia. But saying that Jalen is sabotaging AJ or, siphoning his targets, that would go against everything Jalen has ever, been about in his career. You think Jalen Hurts got along with every single teammate? Maybe not to the level that he doesn't get along with A.J. Brown, but Jalen Hurts is not best friends with everybody. No quarterback is. No person is with anybody that you work with. But still, for the betterment of the company, for the betterment of the team, for the betterment of the offense, if he's open, if he's got opportunities, I'm going to give him the football. As we've seen against Tampa, against, certainly against Minnesota, he's gotten his opportunities. But Kevin Patullo, definitely, that was a weird game plan. And if there's one guy we can kind of point fingers at, if this Eagles season does not end in a second Lombardi trophy, it's probably going to be him. It's either going to be Kevin Patullo for a bad offensive game plan, or it's going to be Nick Sirianni for bungling the clock or bungling a game management type of situation like he almost did against Green Bay on Monday Night Football. Speaking of Green Bay, the other side of this, because this is really interesting to me. There's folks talking about today, oh man, the Packers could miss the playoffs. Is that on the board? Sure. They're third in their division today. I mean, the NFC North, we know, is probably, it's them and the NFC West are the two toughest divisions of football. I would probably say the North just a tick above the NFC West just in terms of the depth. But Chicago's ahead of them. Will that stay? Who knows? And Detroit's ahead of them. That feels like it could stay. They match up on Thanksgiving. Packers defense looked great against Detroit's offense in week 1. We'll see what happens in a few weeks. And I did not think I'd be having this type of conversation on the show, but listen, the games play out the way that they play out. We got to start with Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur, see, his first year in Green Bay was the first year I had this show back in 2019. And for the first few years, it's hard to screw up when you got Aaron Rodgers in his prime. I mean, how are you going to mess that up? And of course, there was the controversial decision in the NFC Championship game against Tampa, not going for it, kicking the field goal, not giving Aaron a chance to get a touchdown, and then a 2-pointer to tie it, all of that. And last year, I kind of had a moment like, wait a second, this guy can coach. Jordan Love goes down ironically, against Philadelphia in Brazil. Malik Willis, who I didn't think was an NFL player, forget backup, forget third string. I didn't think he belonged in the league based on what I saw from him at Tennessee with the Titans. Played okay against Indianapolis. I was at the game where they played the Tennessee Titans. He looked fantastic. I was like, holy crap, is this Jordan Love, Malik Willis, Aaron Rodgers, looks great. Getting the most out of Malik Willis, who then came in later in the season against Jacksonville and helped the Packers win that game when Jordan Love was injured again. It's like, okay, if he can get the most out of this guy, who I didn't think belonged in the league, that's saying something. However, in terms of the body of work, if you're a Packers fan, because I know, forget my sister. I would never forget my sister. She's a LaFleur fan. That might be souring, but we'll see. I'll just say it. One of my professors in college, diehard Packers fan, cannot stand Matt LaFleur. Cannot stand him, and especially as it relates to his play calling. And with this play calling last night, I mean, Warren Sharp, who, again, if you don't follow Warren Sharp, if you're not on X, God bless you. This is probably not the worst decision. If you are, follow Warren Sharp if you want some great football information. Great stat that he gave out. Matt LaFleur last night, or Monday Night Football, on 2nd and 6+ through the third quarter. 5 running back runs, 4 quarterback dropbacks. So he ran the ball 56% of the time. Those running backs averaged 2.4 yards a carry. So as a result of, this is Warren Sharp's tweet, as a result of poor second down decisions, the Packers averaged 9.1 yards to go on third down through the third quarter. That is the longest average to go in any Green Bay game this season. So in other words, in a second and medium, they're putting themselves in a position where now it's a third and long, and now Jordan Love, now everybody in the stadium knows he's throwing it, which might be an indictment on Jordan Love, which we'll talk about in just a second, but the play calling, far too predictable. Right, and I understand Green Bay's receiving core is depleted. I understand that Matthew Golden's dealing with injuries and Christian Watson's just now back in the lineup. Jaden Reed is out and Tucker Kraft is out. I get it. But part of the whole belief in this Green Bay offense was the depth they had at pass catchers. Luke Musgrave is no scrub. You still have Romeo Doubs. You still have Dontavian Wicks. Like, you're still fine in that department. But the fact of the matter is this. Christian Watson, by the way, this has got him, is that if you look at LaFleur's time in Green Bay, first year, they go from missing the playoffs back-to-back years, the last 2 years with Mike McCarthy, to, holy crap, we're in the NFC Championship game. The next year, NFC Championship game, Rodgers is the MVP. He makes the controversial 4th down decision. The next year, 1 seed, out in round 1. Now, I've said it multiple times on this show, that was not a LaFleur problem. That was a Rodgers problem. Guys were open. He just kept forcing it to Devontae Adams. That was one of Rodgers' worst playoff games of his career. The next year with Rodgers, missed the playoffs. Now, again, I point to the Aaron Rodgers in that regard as well, because Aaron hasn't been the same player since 2021. 23, 7 seed, shocked Dallas, but they were the 7 seed. Last year, 7 seed again. Third place in the division. Minnesota, clearly better than Green Bay. Swept them the regular season. I mean, Green Bay last year in division, 1-5. Caleb Williams, before he got Ben Johnson, beat Jordan Love and the Packers on the road at Lambeau in week 18 of the regular season. And now this year, where are they? The 7 seed, third in their division. And so with an NFC North where Dan Campbell's obviously not going anywhere, Ben Johnson looks like he's changed everything in Chicago. We know Kevin O'Connell is a brilliant coach. Is it fair to say Matt LaFleur is the worst coach in his division? Well, if that's the case, you're not winning Super Bowls with that guy. And I'm not calling for LaFleur's job. I am in no way saying, oh, he's not the guy. Let's see how the rest of the season plays out. Because he's an offensive guy. Defense has been great. Jeff Hafley's done an unbelievable job. We know the personnel, Micah Parsons. Matt LaFleur's offense is an offensive guy. The offense hasn't necessarily clicked. And that brings me to Jordan Love. And I said when the Packers made that trade for Micah Parsons, who, just a quick side note, there are those out there, and I'm just, listen, I don't know what Micah did to some of these people. Forget Cowboys. Some Cowboys fans are bitter, ex-girlfriend syndrome, he went on to be with somebody else and you're stuck dumped. Like we see that. Juan Soto with Yankees fans, the prime example. That's Micah with Cowboys fans. Some Cowboys fans are just bitter. But some folks who aren't Cowboys fans, Micah didn't show up on Monday Night Football. Listen, I get it. No sacks, quarterback hits. I'm not going to act like Micah was Myles Garrett on Monday Night Football or Reggie White or something. But two things. A, Micah was giving Jalen Hurts hell in terms of pressures, right? Late in the game, Jalen Hurts was rolling to his right, trying to find somebody. Here comes Micah coming 1,000 miles an hour. Remember the viral video from week 1 where he's chasing down Jared Goff, who obviously can't run like Jalen Hurts, where he's just coming like, a lion seeking out its prey. That's what Micah Parsons was doing with Jalen Hurts, especially in the fourth quarter of the end of the night. But there's kind of an old saying, don't blame your best player for your biggest problems. It's not to say your best player doesn't take accountability, but they're not the problem. And Mike and the Packers defense has been great. And their 3 losses this year, they've given up 13 to Cleveland, 16 to Carolina, and 10 to Philadelphia. Defense is not the problem. Now, they had a bad game against Dallas, but A, it's Dak. B, you're allowed one bad game in the regular season, and Micah still made the game-winning play. So there's that. The other aspect of it is this. Jordan Love, and I go back to what I was saying. When the Packers traded for Micah Parsons, so Green Bay was already good defense. They were top 5, top 6 defense of the league last year, as I detailed many times in the show. But trading for Micah Parsons, that tells me we think Jordan Love can take us to and win a Super Bowl. We've paid him like it. We paid him in excess of $50 million a year after just one season as a starter, 2023, when he was great in the second half of the season, great in that playoff game against Dallas, down year last year, but hey, dealt with injuries. This is the prove it year. This is where Jordan Love establishes, I am one of the most elite quarterbacks in the game. And the Packers' 3 losses, he's been bad. We can show you the numbers. Packers 3 losses, with Jordan Love. This is in three games in total. 1 touchdown, 2 picks, 65% completion, which isn't bad, but not great in today's NFL. 210 pass yards per game, 79 passer rating, QBR 0 to 100 of 52, which is average. And the Packers in their 3 losses this year average 10 points per game. And again, I want to repeat the stat I said a second ago is that their 3 losses, 13 to the Cleveland Browns. By the way, Browns don't even get their only touchdown if Jordan Love doesn't throw a fourth quarter pick deep in his own territory, which gave the Browns a short field to score. Same thing with Carolina. They scored 16. Their only touchdown came on a Jordan Love pick on a drive that started inside the Packers 40. Then last night, Monday Night Football, gave up 10. All right? It was a nothing game at halftime. Darn sure when the defense's fault. Secondary was solid. Valentine and Nixon. Pass rush with Micah Parsons was getting to Jalen Hurts in the fourth quarter, making him, force him out of the pocket, forcing some throwaways. They made the deal for Micah because they think Jordan Love can take them to the promised land. It's like, okay, Jordan in this Packers offense, which is a good running back in Josh Jacobs, good offensive line, although it's dealt with injuries, obviously, but every team in the league deals with injuries, especially up front. Receivers we don't have a true number 1. We hope Matthew Golden can evolve into being that guy. Slow start, but we'll see. But we're certainly deep. We've got like 5 guys and Tucker Kraft, who prior to his unfortunate injury, knock on wood, for him, it was having the best season of his career. Matt LaFleur is an offensive coach. Is that if we add a next gear to this defense, if we're playing with the lead, Micah Parsons, Rashawn Gary, go after the quarterback. Quay Walker, stop the run. Be able to hide what can be at times a hit or miss secondary. So if you're Green Bay today, it's defense is doing their job. They're holding up their end of the bargain. Micah's doing his thing. Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love, not so much. Predictable play calling by LaFleur, and the 3 losses by Green Bay, Jordan Love's got 1 touchdown. 1. Right? Passer rating not below 80. So like this is, I don't think this is a situation where Green Bay misses the playoffs. But if they enter the postseason again, let's say Detroit has established themselves as a contender the last couple of years. Let's say Detroit wins the division. Let's say Chicago, with Caleb Williams, keeps getting better. Let's say they're in as a wildcard team, and then it's Green Bay. Well, wait a second. That was back-to-back years the Packers finished 3rd in their division. And the only reason Minnesota wouldn't have made it is because they don't have the quarterback, right? Jordan Love's obviously better than J.J. McCarthy. Then that's going to be a knock on Matt LaFleur, who will get a second job. Matt LaFleur's not a bad head coach by any stretch of the imagination. Personally, I hope if we're going to have a head coach trade, so to speak, I hope Mike Tomlin is the first one traded so we can finally be rid of mediocrity. But a different conversation for a different day. But yeah, that was disappointing by the Green Bay Packers in a major way. I picked Philadelphia. I did not see that coming from Green Bay's offense. Okay, let's shift. Oh my gosh, just loaded show today. Carving up the context is going to be a good one in about 10, 15 minutes. You're going to want to stay tuned for it. But first, Nico Harrison, who was, to the delight of all Mavs fans, to loosely quote President Gerald Ford, "My friends, our long national nightmare is over in Dallas." Although the nightmare is not necessarily over because firing Nico Harrison doesn't bring Luka Doncic back. But alas, Nico Harrison has been fired by the Dallas Mavericks. And I got to say, first and foremost, before we get into the specifics of this, I am floored at the number of people that are like, Nico wasn't the problem. Charles Barkley, who y'all know I love Charles. I get on Charles, but it's all love. Charles Barkley's the man. My guy. Love him to death. I defend him. I will be the last man outside of his wife, Renee, that will defend Draymond Green. But Draymond Green and others. Man, Nico Harrison wasn't the problem. He was correct in trading Luka. By what metric imaginable? We're going to use this on this show. We're actually going to use a couple of old carving up graphics to bring on here. But this was back in February when the trade was made. This is who Dallas traded, to the Los Angeles Lakers. Luka's postseason numbers, prior to last year. He was second all time in playoff points behind MJ at 30.9, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, 46% for the field, 2 conference finals appearances, and he was 9 months removed at that point taking the Mavs to the NBA Finals. Real quick, let's go ahead and look at that trade for just a second. Let's look at the trade, okay? So Lakers got Luka, Maxi Kleber, Markieff Morris. Mavs got Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a first-round pick in 2029. If you are Nico Harrison, the whole justification of making this move was, Luka maybe gives us the better chance to win long-term from a more broad perspective, but right now, I think we have the personnel to build a defense-minded team to go compete for a championship. Got PJ Washington, got, what's my man's name? Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. Now we have some real size. We got Anthony freaking Davis, and Kyrie can score the basketball. Like, hey, that can win a championship in the next 2 to 3 seasons. Small window, but we think we can do it. Kind of like, i.e. Brooklyn Nets with KD, Kyrie, and Harden type of mindset. Kyrie blows his Achilles. AD deals with injuries. Oh, man, well, that's not fair to... You didn't see that coming? Maybe not an Achilles. God bless Kyrie, knock on wood. Hopefully he is able to come back at this point this season and play for somebody else, play winning caliber basketball, because Kyrie, I've grown to really admire him the last couple of years. But Kyrie's in his 15th season last year, 14th season with an injury history from day one. Going back to Duke has an injury history. And Anthony Davis missed the entirety of his first season in the NBA due to injury and has an injury history. And he's older than Luka. And now, as we've seen from recent photos, is maybe in worse shape than Luka was in. Maybe not worse, but close to it. So you're banking your immediate championship contention on 2 stars, 2, no question, future first ballot Hall of Famers, Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, who have an injury history. Who, in the case of Anthony Davis, is notorious for coming into camp out of shape. 2020 is the prime example. Like, that was supposed to be Bron, AD lead the Lakers to a title in the bubble, and Bron's going to hand the baton to AD, and AD comes to camp out of shape. And it was kind of like this, oh, so it's not going to be like that, huh? Okay, so he's not going to be the next Lakers big legend. It's not going to be, Kareem and then Shaq and then Anthony Davis. But then Dallas, by virtue of pure luck, lands the number 1 overall pick in the draft, take Cooper Flagg, and thus far he just looks solid. Like, I think he's got a bright future ahead. We're way too quick to say he's gonna be this, he's gonna be that after just 10 games of the league. I think Cooper Flagg's gonna be really good. But Nico Harrison's whole thing, defense wins championships. That was the rationale in the press conference he had. I think it was with Jason Kidd, Mavs ownership after the Luka Doncic trade. Can we show what the Mavs defense has been? Because to his credit, the defense has been great. Fantastic. And by the way, this was with Anthony Davis missing most of the year. 3rd in defensive rating, 8th in points per game allowed. Mavs defense has been great. The Mavs offense has been literally the worst in the NBA. Literally. Worst offensive rating, last in points per game. Meanwhile, Luka Doncic with the Los Angeles Lakers, because I know he's fat, lazy, drank too much. He's averaging 37, 9, and 9 on 49% shooting, and thus far through 7 games, he scored 35 plus 5 times. He scored 40 plus 3 times. And it goes back to, folks, some things just don't need a lot of, you don't need to break it down a ton in order to understand that. I've used the example all the time, like our Constitution. We hold these truths to be self-evident. That all men are created equal. And it's self-evident. It's so obvious, we don't even need to say it a second time. Again, for those that are still iffy on whether or not Dallas or the Lakers won the trade. I'm a Warriors fan. Trust me, I wish the Lakers didn't win the trade. But just say it out loud. Let's see. The guy who's 2nd all-time in points per game in the playoffs coming into last year. 9 months removed from taking Dallas to a finals. 9 months removed after taking them to their 2nd conference finals in 3 years, is the 2nd greatest player in franchise history in his prime with MVPs in his future, scoring titles in his future. Okay, he's out of shape. Not going to say he wasn't. But he can't get in shape, A, and B, he was pretty good out of shape. He took you to 2 finals, 2 conference finals and 1 of finals, was beloved in the city of Dallas, and you trade him without him knowing until the last second. You do it, by the way, you do it in the middle of the night. I remember where I was. I was in Florida. I was sweaty. I was about to go to bed. It was like 12:30 more. I'm going to bed. It's the weekend. And I see the news. I don't believe it. Nobody believes until Shams literally goes on television and said, guys, this is true. This just happened. Blindside Luka, really blindside Mavs fans. Tank, the value of the franchise. And for what? Ego. Because let's keep it a buck. Nico Harrison, clearly. I mean, we've seen the video where he takes the beer out of Luka's hands after the Mavs gentlemen sweep the Timberwolves to get to the finals in 2024. Where it's, okay, yeah, I know you just led us to our 3rd finals in franchise history, or 1st in, 13 years. But, we're just not going to have that. We've got a week before the finals. The man can have a drink. He can. He's a grown adult. And so, and if you're I'm a Warriors fan. I am still, what are we, 9 months removed? 9 months removed from the trade. I'm still enraged for Mavs fans. I cannot imagine if when I was 13, 14, 15 years old. Now, again, Steph had won championships, Luka hadn't. But Luka is the caliber of player, or at least close to the caliber of player Steph was at his peak, which tells you what I think of Luka, because I think Steph's one of the 6 greatest players ever. Luka's got more first-team All-NBAs than Steph, so that tells you. If Bob Myers in the middle of the night, mid-season, out of nowhere, traded Steph Curry, that's the reason for me and every single person who calls himself a fan of the Golden State Warriors say, hell with y'all. We're never watching this team until you're fired. You just traded, in the case of Steph, greatest player in franchise history. In the case of Luka, 2nd greatest. Maybe he could have eventually became the greatest Mav ever. We'll never know. Because of ego. Because of pride. Because you want to do it your way. Even though you're 9 months removed from a finals. You just gone there. You had cruised through the West. You'd taken out the 1 seed Thunder. You had gentlemen swept the Minnesota Timberwolves. Yeah, you lose to Boston. Boston rolled through everybody. Like they were getting comparisons to all-time great teams. No shame in that. So it's just Nico Harrison should never work in an NBA front office again. I'm sorry, he can't. I'm sure there are better people for whatever job openings that you would have if you're an NBA franchise that someone else could fill other than him. He alienated a fan base. We saw Luka when he made his return to Dallas in April. Man, they showed the tribute video. He is literally, I don't want to say sobbing, but close to it. Tears just flowing down his face. Devastated, like, God, everything I did for this franchise. And they didn't even give me the heads up that they were talking to teams. And by the way, Luka loves being a Laker. He said it. He loves playing for the Lakers, so it's not all bad. It's not like they sent him to Charlotte or something. But it is, and by the way, you got one first for Luka freaking Doncic. You got one first-round pick and an old, off-injured, inconsistent superstar, now at this point star, Anthony Davis, who you'll probably end up trading when it's all said and done if you're the Dallas Mavericks. Which probably means you'll then trade Kyrie, and then you'll be left with nothing. So, Mavs fans, rejoice in the streets. I've seen videos, they're popping champagne. Have at it, man. Have a party in the city of Dallas. It's not like the Cowboys going to give you a reason to do it anytime soon, right? Because the reign of terror that this man has inflicted on this franchise this year, and people are like, oh, you're overreacting, it's just sports. It is just sports. It is. At the end of the day, it is just sports. I get passionate. Y'all watching and listening get passionate. We all love it. But that's part of the reason that there is such outrage from Mavs fans is that, like, we build our entire schedules. We build our fantasy teams. We gamble on it. We buy their jerseys. We invest time and energy and love and passion into these teams. And every once in a while, if you're lucky enough, you will get a superstar of the level of Luka Doncic who comes in an organization as a kid. You watch him grow. You watch him develop. You watch him become one of the best players in a league. You watch him truly ingratiate himself with the city. Luka was not in Dallas. He was of Dallas to a certain degree as like an honorary, Dallas citizen. Gives you all this joy. You buy his jersey. You root for him. He hits all these buzzer beaters. You're pumping your fist. Let's go, Luka. And Luka loves you guys at American Airlines Center. And some guy, because his ego got in the way, snatched that from your grasp. When the star didn't want that to happen. This isn't LeBron leaving Cleveland. This isn't KD leaving Oklahoma City. This is a trade that the star player did not force. So I'm getting worked up about this. I'm a Warriors fan. Like, I have no vested interest in the Mavs being good or terrible or mid or whatever. But sports fan to sports fan, God bless y'all Mavs fans. Have as much fun as you want to have in the streets of Dallas. And hope that Cooper Flagg develops into being the superstar that Mavs fans hope he'll be. Because this is good riddance, man. Good riddance. Nico Harrison from the Dallas Mavericks and the rest of it, and obviously the Mavs will never rehire him. The rest of 29 organizations in the NBA, don't let this guy come near your franchise. And by the way, remember when Nico Harrison was at Nike? Because that's where he came from before he went to Dallas. Exec at Nike. Famously, I've told the story on my show. It's well known. I'm not reporting anything, but I've told the story on the show before. Steph Curry was once at Nike before he was at Under Armour. Part of the reason Steph Curry went to Under Armour and developed a huge shoe brand there, now has his own Curry brand, is when Steph is going to a pitch meeting to try it, Nike's hoping Steph will sign an extension with them. This is before Steph Curry is Steph Curry. He was Stephen Curry at that point. Great shooter. No one thought he was going to be this. They want to extend him at Nike. He goes to a pitch meeting. They play this montage of Steph Curry, these highlight plays, breaking people's ankles, shooting deep threes, wearing Nikes at the very end of the video. Nico Harrison to Nike put this together. At the end of the video, welcome to Nike, Kevin Durant. And it was at that point Steph was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. They don't think I'm valuable enough to remember my freaking name for the promotion, a promotional, video. So detail-oriented, ego-driven, broke the heart of an entire fan base and that player that he moved, and his vision exploded into smithereens. Shocker. I know that's surprising. You were going to build a championship contender around two guys, AD, Kyrie, future Hall of Famers, but can't stay healthy. And guess what? They're both hurt. And AD, who has a history of being out of shape, is out of shape again. So, kudos, Mavs fans. Celebrate all you want. All right. It's a loaded show, man. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, though, we got a good edition of Carving Up the Context on tap. Y'all don't want to miss this one because you know what? I'll save it for the other side of the break. We'll be back in just 1 minute here on Carving Up Live. Don't go anywhere. Back to Carving Up Live. Appreciate everybody stopping by on this Wednesday. So as we do every week on Wednesday, Bryson's Best 10, that's coming up in about 10 to 15 minutes. And of course, Carving Up the Context. It's basically a segment in which I look at a story or something that I am seeing happening in the world of sports, and I say, hey, let's break this down. Let's go to the root of this and bring out the context of it. So, as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, primetime Deion Sanders says, give me my theme music. On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, from time to time on this show, I did it on Friday. Some of y'all know I have a deep passion and certainly a love of American presidential history and therefore by extension, politics. And something I'm observing, because anytime the sports world, the political world intersect, I'm like, oh, this is put in my backyard for me to go from here. And so I've noticed over time in my life, over the last 10 years or so, it has been a point of contention. It has been a point of emphasis, certainly, for certain folks in this country to say, sports the great unifier. I've always said sports the great unifier. We all come around it. And so therefore, I just don't want my politics or someone else's politics to be shoved in my face during an athletic event, right? Like I don't want any liberal or conservative agendas being put on television. I just want to watch the game for the game: football, basketball, baseball, rowing, whatever the sport is, Olympics. And while I disagree, and I'll talk about that in just a second, while I disagree because sports and politics have always been intersected, which I'll talk about in this, in this segment. If you're consistent on it, I can respect that. I got no issues with it. As long as you're consistent, no issues. So I do find it a bit odd that when the sitting president of the United States, Donald Trump, goes on with Kenny Albert, Jonathan Vilma, Fox NFL, calling the Detroit Lions Washington Commanders game. He's in the booth with them, right? He's in there talking. It's like, well, that's the president. Like I mean, Ronald Reagan back in the day was. I remember seeing a documentary about Bo Jackson. Ronald Reagan was helping call the game. Ronald Reagan had a background in sports broadcasting, right? He was in the booth, might have been with Vince Scully or some legendary announcer, Al Michaels, somebody. And Bo Jackson hits the home run in the All-Star game, and Reagan's in the booth calling it. Like, I've always said, anytime a president is into sports, I freaking love it. I got to admit, that was one thing I kind of didn't love about Biden. I don't think Biden was that big of a sports fan. Now, by the way, if you're a politician, if you're the president, you got bigger things to worry about in sports, obviously. But it was kind of cool when Barack Obama would predict March Madness. George W. Bush, owned part of the Texas Rangers. And he was at the Dallas Cowboys game last week for Veterans Day, salute service. Like, I love it when presidents, when public figures, when celebrities feel like they're just as big of a sports fan as the rest of us are. That's great. That's why sports is the great unifier. And Trump, by the way, throughout his life has been a sports fan. He's had relationships with Brady and Belichick, Doug Flutie, and Red Sox 04 champion Johnny Damon. Like, he's had Brett Favre. He's had a relationship with a lot of professional athletes. No problem. But then when corporate execs are saying, hey, let's keep politics out of our sports. The people are tuning into our shows just to get politics. By the way, Donald Trump goes on Pat McAfee's show yesterday for Veterans Day. Now, by the way, I want to say this to be abundantly clear. Listen, if I got to the point of Pat McAfee and Donald Trump wanted to come on the show, he's allowed on the show. Okay, I am down for a conversation with the President of the United States. Y'all know how I feel about the President. I push back on things that he would say, but what are you supposed to say? I hear some on the left say, well, we can't platform. He's the president. He's got a pretty big platform. And anything beneath that is a demotion, so to speak. So none of this is a knock on McAfee, who, by the way, said at the end, I watched the interview. At the end of the interview said, we reached out to President Obama, schedules, conflicted. You saw the video of him on a plane with veterans, with, paying tribute to them for Veterans Day, all of it. And McAfee even threw out the possibility it still might happen in the future. So Pat seems like the type of dude. I actually remember reading an article during the campaign process, during the election, that he didn't want to have Trump or Kamala Harris on his show, so not to divide, his base, because both of them were going on podcasts. So McAfee, not knocking him at all in the slightest. I love Pat McAfee. What I don't love is when you have folks out there, folks at a company called Outkick, for example, led by Clay Travis, who are big on, hey, you know what? I don't want the liberal agenda being shoved down my throat while I'm watching an NBA game. I don't like having Black Lives Matter on the court. I don't like the protest before the national anthem, because politics and sports are not aligned, are not tied in together. When, of course, historically, that could not be further from the truth. That goes back, folks, not even joking. That goes back to the very first president of the United States, George Washington. I'm actually reading a book about George Washington right now by Ron Chernow. Highly recommend. Long book, but it's really good. And it talks about how when Washington was first running for public office, that at events, they would have competitions. They would have, I think in some cases, they had like horse races. So that's a sport. And it was to kind of draw some support behind Washington to get folks to be like, hey, he's common man, every man. He's just like us, likes competition. It goes, if we want to go more recent times, it goes to the great Jackie Robinson. Obviously, we know famously broke the color barrier in 1947 with the Brooklyn Dodgers. Well, that was, if you tell the story of the civil rights movement, that's a major footnote. Is that in the 1940, 1947, baseball was the sport. It was. Basketball was in its infancy. Football, college was more popular than the NFL, which was still a very, very young league. Baseball was it. It was America's pastime. It was the sport. It was segregated. Jackie Robinson helps break the color barrier. Or doesn't help. He does break the color barrier in Major League Baseball. That is a major footnote in the civil rights movement. Politics is obviously involved with the civil rights movement. When you also consider when Muhammad Ali, famously at the time, catch play, Muhammad Ali refused to go into the draft, or refused to be drafted for the Vietnam War. Well, then he got Jim Brown and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Russell, along with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., speaking on behalf of Muhammad Ali, who never backed off that stance, and safe to say was correct in that stance. Should have never been in Vietnam. That's another story for another show. Politics and sports have always been intertwined. Tommy Smith and John Carlos raising their fist during the national anthem in the 1968 Olympics because of the racial injustices that were happening back at home. We've had athletes run for office. We've had coaches run for office. Heck, we have some in the sports media that will probably run maybe for president of the United States. Y'all know who I'm talking about. They've always been intertwined. I mean, when COVID was going on, Trump was the president at the time. Trump was talking to these sports leagues. He was talking to Adam Silver. He was talking to Roger Goodell. He was talking to the Big Ten commissioner, SEC commissioner, to make sure that we still had sports. So we've got all of these conversations going on between those in the federal government, those in the local government, and those involved in professional or college sports. So they've always been intertwined. They've always been intersected. This idea that this is just a brand new concept and it's, I don't want it shoved down my throat, except if Nick Bosa is wearing a MAGA hat after a 49ers win over the Cowboys, October 2024, talked about it on this show. Well, I mean, he's got a right to free speech, right? I mean, he's a person too. He gets an opinion. But of course, if a LeBron James, a Steph Curry, a Kevin Durant talk about politics, it's...
So keep the political commentary to yourself, or as someone once said, shut up and dribble.
But Pat McAfee, a former athlete and obviously a very successful sports broadcaster with the Pat McAfee show, has Trump on. By the way, he's got every right to do that. He said after the show, hey, this is not a partisan thing. We reached out to President Obama as well. Hopefully we can get him on the show in the future. When McAfee has him on, or if Fox Sports has Donald Trump on, it's either crickets or it is, hey, you know what? This is great. Hey, this is the president. I voted for him. I love him. And good for Fox Sports and good for Pat McAfee for giving him, another platform to do his thing. Which, by the way, something else too. And McAfee, to his credit, I think at times was trying to steer the train in the opposite direction. But of course, if you got somebody with the impulse control of Donald Trump, that's easier said than done. Where this was supposed to be, he's going to come on, we're going to talk about sports. He's going to give love to the military servicemen and women, during the show. And of course, I counted in the interview 10 explicitly political things he brought up. He brought up how Joe Biden ruined everything. He brought up how, again, he keeps bringing up how the 2020 election was stolen. What did he say? It was like a hanky-panky or something like that during the interview. Hanky-panky stuff happened. He also, aside from politics, keeps going back to, he wants the Washington Commanders to go back to their old name, which is a literal dictionary-defined slur. I would like to see you walk up to an indigenous person and say that word and see how much they appreciated that. Regardless, people might be saying, Bryson, do you have an issue with Trump going on the Fox NFL broadcast or on the Pat McAfee show? Honestly, no, I don't. It's President of the United States. I got no problem with it. What I do have a problem with, be it corporate execs at major networks who are like, politics is a no-go, yet they have the President of the United States come on their network, and two of their most prominent voices on their network, one's probably going to run for president, one's probably going to run for Alabama Senate. And then when you have folks at Outkick, led by Clay Travis, keep politics out of my sports, keep agendas out of my sports, I just want to watch the game for the game. Nothing when this is going on. If it's nothing, it's, hey, it's great, good for Pat McAfee for having a patriotic American like President Trump on his show. Sure, if he had President Obama on, the response would not be terribly similar. So in this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, it's just further evidence. Sports and politics, man, they're like this. They're like peas and carrots. They're like peanut butter and jelly. They're one and the same. I mean, there's famously early 20th century. I don't say famously. A lot of people don't know this story. Is that there was petitions for football as a sport to be outlawed. Theodore Roosevelt, huge football fan, made sure that didn't happen. He saved football, the sport, as it's growing. Politics and sports have always been intertwined. And so If McAfee wants to bring on Trump, if he wants to bring on Obama, okay. Fine with me. It's his show. Do whatever he wants to do. But don't be all preachy. Don't be all self-righteous about how some folks are trying to shove their agenda down your throat. But when someone else's agenda comes on, and by the way, they say things that are objectively false, like, I won the 2020 election when you obviously and indisputably did not. Wouldn't I be able to just say in return, you're shoving that down my throat? I don't like that. If you're going to say keep politics out of sports, fine. Just be consistent with it. If you are, God bless you. I don't agree with you, but at least you're consistent. If you're not, you're a fraud. Well, let's keep it a buck. You're a fraud. So there you go. I can't with, I don't like hypocrisy. You know, I don't like, and something else too, last thing, and we'll move on, because this has always been a big kind of point of contention and point of debate is, you know, Colin Kaepernick kneels during the national anthem, and that's why the NFL ratings came down. We could show, this is another old carving it up graphic, but there's more new information, is that the ratings were down in 2012, went back up in 2013. Ratings were down in 16. They also went down in 17, but to be fair, there was a bunch of injuries in the NFL. Ratings plummeted in 2020, went right back up, skyrocketed in 2021. And the ratings this year, or last year, I should say, 17.5 million people watched an NFL game. As you can see by that 2023 graphic, the ratings came down. Why? Because it was an election year, and because Americans, as they should, care about who the next president of the United States is going to be. Cable, I mean, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, all the major cable networks dominate the ratings in the months leading up to the first Tuesday in November of every election year. And then sports goes right back to the top, because sports is the king of television. Football in particular is the king of television. So there you go. All right. Segment I do also every Wednesday is called Bryson's Best 10. Essentially, I just rank the top 10 teams in the National Football League. So let's go and get the background music going. Here we go. Top 10 teams in the league. All right. Starts at number 10, staying exactly, and this is going to be a theme of Bryce's Best 10 this week, not a lot of movement based on last week. Only one team moved up from where they're at a week ago. You'll see who that is. But staying where they're at last week, the 10th best team in the National Football League is the Denver Broncos. The Broncos, staying where they're at from last week, are the 10th best team in the National Football League, and here's why. Well, Bryson, they won 7 in a row. Bryson, they have the best defense in football. They have maybe the best offensive line in football. Sean Payton's a future Hall of Fame head coach. All of which are the only reasons I even put them in to begin with. Because when it's all said and done, they're not winning the division. Kansas City starting this Sunday is going to run them down for the AFC West. It's not Kansas City. I think the Chargers are going to do it, even with LA's injuries. The quarterback they've got is their Achilles heel. He's not good. Completion percentage, 60%, hovers in the 60 percentile. Yeah, he's great in the fourth quarter. Kudos, right? He makes the plays with his arm, his legs, the Giants, and against Houston. But we see it every year. We see teams that are just barely getting by the skin of their teeth, and then come playoff time, out in round one. Saw it with the Steelers in 20. Saw it with the Cardinals in 21. Saw it with the Vikings in 2022. Some of these teams which have had great coaches. In some cases, talented quarterbacks. But they're still living on edge, so to speak. Do you have the ability, with the roster you've got, to dominate an opponent? And Denver really doesn't, because of the limitations they have at quarterback. So with respect to their defense, which is phenomenal, which is leading the league in sacks by a mile, Denver is the 10th best team in the National Football League. Team in the division is a spot ahead of them. Unranked last week, they're in this week. It is the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are the 9th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. Was I disillusioned with the Pittsburgh Steelers offense on Sunday night? Of course I was. Where are my Steelers at? I love my Steelers. I was just disillusioned. Couldn't believe it. What I saw from Aaron Rodgers. I could believe it to a degree, but I didn't think it'd be that bad. But credit where it is due. Khalil Mack's back in the lineup. This Chargers defense coached by Jesse Minter, one of the best in football, top to bottom. And offensively, listen, I've been critical of Justin Herbert, and I still need to see the kid win a playoff game. I do. He's got to do it at some point. With that being said, against a great Steelers pass rush, TJ Watt, Highsmith, Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton, to be when the makeshift offensive line, both tackles out, to be as solid as he was, to refrain from turning the football the way that he did against the Steelers defense that tends to feast off of takeaways, I thought was highly impressive. Jim Harbaugh is one of the best coaches in football. Listen, I think this team's going to end up, I said last week, missed the playoffs. That showed me the ability to dominate a Steelers team that you did not match up well against in terms of your offense against their defense. I found very impressive. So the Chargers are the 9th best team in the National Football League. They'll probably be a wild card team, but nonetheless, well coached, and obviously Herbert's an excellent quarterback. At number 8, I believe they are down one spot from last week. It is the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are the 8th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So kudos to them. Go to Berlin, get a road win against the Atlanta Falcons. Again, some of this, whether it's where you stay where you're at or you fall a little bit, is because in some cases, I'll just spoil it, New England's ahead of Indianapolis this week when they were last week. But Daniel Jones, to his credit, comes up big in the fourth quarter. The fourth down conversion to Tyler Warren, game-winning drive in OT, which was mostly led by Jonathan Taylor, who's a man amongst boys against the Atlanta Falcons. 3 touchdowns, 244 yards, averaged 7.6 yards per carry, and of course had an 83-yard scamper to the house in the fourth quarter of that game. Jonathan Taylor is unbelievable. You'll see Bryson's MVP ladder next week, which we do every other week on the show. Jonathan Taylor's going to have a high spot on the list. Lou Anarumo's done a great job with this defense. But there have been moments in the last couple of weeks against great pass rushers like Pittsburgh, like Atlanta, where Daniel Jones has turned, to a degree, back into the New York Giants Daniel Jones. Looks a little lost out there, is holding onto the ball too long. That's something that I think as some of the better defensive coaches get film on, like a Lou Anarumo last week, or Lou Anarumo, like a Raheem Morris last week, that could become a problem moving forward for the Indianapolis Colts offense. And to be frank, do you trust Daniel Jones more than Mahomes? Heck, at this point, Drake May, right? Than Josh Allen. Even if the Bills aren't in, Josh Allen, you certainly trust more in the postseason than Daniel Jones. That is why the Colts are the 8th best team in the league. This is why the next team I've got on this list, this is why the next rank I've got is why I despise power rankings. Because power rankings is, who are the best records in the league? Let's rank them from there. Takes no effort, no energy. It doesn't take you to watch the first snap of football. Are you watching the games? That's why Denver's at 10, because their quarterback, I'm watching the games. He's bad. He's had a terrible season. Okay, I'm watching the games. I see the Indianapolis. Jonathan Taylor's awesome. He saved their bacon. Had to have an all-time great running back performance in Colts history just to get them out of Dodge against the 3-6 Falcons. The next team on the list, I've said all year, I don't think they're a contender. They're playing good football right now, and I don't care that they have a losing record. It is the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, after being unranked for a month plus now, are the 7th best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So Lamar Jackson's back, and when Lamar Jackson's back, the Baltimore Ravens offense, it routinely puts up 30 points per game. I mean, I didn't think they even played that well against Minnesota. Now, some of that is they were aided by some J.J. McCarthy interceptions and what have you, and being inaccurate, but they still put up 27 on the road against a Brian Flores-led defense. So the connection with Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, very, very real. They run the football. Derrick Henry, I am seeing a little bit of a decline in Derrick Henry's production. He is in year 10, or like he's taking a lot of hits that body, a lot of tread on those tires. Like you're going to see a somewhat of a decline on his part, but I still like Baltimore's receivers. DeAndre Hopkins has had, I don't want to say a resurgence, but has been a bigger part of this offense than he was with Kansas City or with Tennessee, his previous 2 destinations. So I've been impressed by that. And again, the Ravens defense looks like it's found its way a little bit. I don't know if some of that's because they're playing mid to bad quarterbacks or what's going to happen moving forward when they play some of the more elite players at that position, but they've survived the hardest part of their schedule. They're going to, as I hate to say it, they're going to run down my Steelers for the AFC North. And listen, Lamar Jackson's had his struggles in the playoffs, but he is still Lamar Jackson. He is still a 2-time MVP. The Ravens are the 7th best team in the National Football League. And staying where they're at last week at number 6, it is the Detroit Lions. The Lions are the 6th best team in the National Football League. And before I tell you why, Dan Campbell, what did y'all do? What did you do as the play caller for Detroit's offense against the Washington Commanders this week?
Kneecap.
Everybody's getting kneecaps on Sunday afternoon, Sunday night in Washington. Listen, Jared Goff was sensational, but I think Dan Campbell calling the plays. I think the biggest reason he took the play calling duties away from John Morton was last week in that loss to Minnesota, we really didn't establish the run at all. And with the offensive line we've got, with the 2-headed monster, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, that's inexcusable. That cannot happen. And so folks are kind of looking at this as, oh, this is a last chance desperation move by Dan Campbell. I don't think that's what it was. I think we need to get back to establishing who we are on the offensive side of the ball. We need to get back to our identity, which is run the football. Jameer Gibbs, David Montgomery, split the carries. Jared Goff works out of play action. We play ahead of the sticks. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, Sam Laporta can take the top off of our defense, or top off of their defense. And so, listen, Detroit's still a clear Super Bowl contender in the NFC. Of course, the defense is always going to be concerned. It is. Even if they've got Aiden Hutchinson and Brian Branch, some of these guys, Derek Barnes, there's going to be some holes there. Right, so that's probably what's going to get them beat in the postseason once again. But the Lions are the best offensive football. They are the 6th best team in the National Football League. At number 5, staying where they were at last week, off the bye, it is the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are the 5th best team in the National Football League, and here's why. So for Kansas City, again, I've got a team with a losing record in Week 11 on this list. I don't care about the standings. I care about what I'm watching as of late. In Kansas City, yes, they lost to Buffalo, and clearly Buffalo plays their best football against Kansas City in a regular season game in November. That said, Patrick Mahomes is getting Xavier Worthy back. This Chiefs offense, with the exception against Buffalo, had yet to score under 30 points. They've been great in that regard. You talk about a team that is replenished their offensive line. Josh Simmons looks like he's going to be back this week for that big game against Denver this Sunday. So left tackle's back, offensive line with Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, all of these guys rejuvenized. Still got questions about, Juwan Taylor. So I do, but the receiving core, unbelievably deep. Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and Rashee Rice back from the lineup. Travis Kelce has more of a pep in his step than he did a year ago. Maybe the final season of his career. We'll see. Andy Reid's one of the best coaches of football, and Spags is always going to have that defense ready to go. The only drawback I have with Kansas City is their pass rush. Chris Jones, maybe he's saving his best for the playoffs, right? Maybe that's the case, like Kelsey's done the last 2 years. At the same time, he's made 2 mistakes in 2 big games against the not against Detroit Lions, against the LA Chargers and against the Jacksonville Jaguars, either leaving his assignment or not knowing where Trevor Lawrence was on that Monday night game. So some holes that Kansas City has, I think Spags will be able to fill them. They are still my pick to win the AFC. They are the 5th best team in the National Football League, and they're about to come out like gangbusters after the bye, as Andy Reid teams tend to do. At number 4, up 4 spots from last week, or 3 spots, I guess, from last week. 4 spots, 3 spots. Either way, it is the New England Patriots. The Patriots are the 4th best team in the National Football League, and here's why. Let me just show you the stat, and then it'll kind of tell you why. Right? That they're a top 10 team on both sides of the ball. 8th in points per game, 9th in pass yards per game, 3rd in pass touchdowns per game, 7th in terms of, third down efficiency. Their defense, 6th in points per game allowed, and they are 1st in rush yards per game and rush touchdowns allowed, and 3rd in yards per carry allowed. So they stop the run. They've got a great secondary with the likes of Christian Gonzalez and others. And offensively, Drake May, what can you say? This is a 7-game winning streak. He didn't play a perfect game against Tampa Bay. Again, the goal line interception was an ugly one against that Bucs defense. With that being said, I thought he played under control. I thought against a great defensive coach in Todd Bowles off the bye, I thought he showed incredible poise, used his legs. Again, they finally got Travion Henderson involved in the offense. He had 2 touchdowns, kind of the one that broke the game open late in the 4th quarter, kind of put slammed the door for New England. What Mike Vrabel has done, obviously, he's a defensive coach. The defense for New England's been great. Hiring Josh McDaniels, bringing Josh McDaniels back. Josh McDaniels isn't going anywhere because he was a bad head coach, but he's a really successful, young, productive, offensive coordinator with Drake May. He helped Mac Jones become a Pro Bowler. This Patriots team is a true Super Bowl threat in the AFC, especially if they win the AFC East, which I think they will, and get the number 1 seed. Holy crap, the road to Super Bowl 60 is going to have to go through Foxborough. That is dangerous. The Patriots are the 4th best team in the National Football League. The team that they beat in Super Bowl 49, and one of the greatest football games I've ever seen, stays where they're at number 3. It is the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are the 3rd best team in the National Football League, and here's why. To me, all of the 3 teams that I have, in the top 3, you can make a case that they're the best team in football, and there were points in time where I was like, I think I may put Seattle at the top. I decided against it only in the sense that I like the 2 teams ahead of them a little bit better, and the rankings from last week don't change whatsoever. So for Seattle, Sam Darnold has been efficient. He's been accurate. He's pushed the ball down the field. Jackson Smith and Jigba, not quite on the pace to break Calvin Johnson's single-season receiving record, but who knows? Has a couple of big games. He could potentially put himself in position to have a 2,000-yard season. insane speed, great route running, great hands, and the fact they had Rashid Shaheed, speaking of speed, is going to absolutely blow the top off of a lot of defense in the postseason. Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker, they run the football well. O-line's excellent, and their defense. The kid, Eman Wari, out of South Carolina, has been a great pickup for them. I loved him out of college in this past draft. The defensive line, Leonard Williams, DeMarcus Lawrence, like they are stacked on top to bottom on both sides of the football. I think Mike McDonald is in the running for Coach of the Year. You talk about, what's my man's name? Clint Kubiak, who's done a great job with this offense. The Seahawks team is playing great football on both sides. They are the third best team in the National Football League, but only the second best team in their own division, and a team they play this week in a game that I cannot wait for this Sunday. At number 2, it is the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are the second best team in the National Football League, and here's why. So for LA, so much of this comes down to Matthew Stafford. A Matthew Stafford who had an injured back in the preseason. We weren't sure how healthy he was going to be this year, how the rapport with Devontae Adams was going to be. And, well, let's see how Matthew Stafford's been in his last 18 games going back to last year. He's been sensational. 40 touchdowns to 3 picks. That's insane. Record of 14-4, 110 rating. Matt Stafford, over the course of, his 17th year in the NFL, this is the best football he's ever played. McVay, we know, is a top 2 level coach. At least I feel that way, that he's a top 2 level coach. Rams O-line is great. They're using more 12, 13 personnel, running the football, using play action for Stafford. We know Puka Nacua is a top 5 receiver. Devontae Adams, even at this advanced age and stage of his career, great route runner, great hands, lethal in the red zone with Matthew Stafford. They've got a great chemistry down there. And the defense is excellent. Jared Verse and Byron Young getting after the quarterback. Secondary has showed some real promise. So for them to go on the road to San Francisco, I know the Niners are beat up. I get that. But A, it's a divisional game. B, the Niners had just beaten the Rams a month prior. And C, Shanahan's always had McVay's number. Throughout the course of their careers, because they both got to their destinations the same season, 2017. That was a really impressive start-to-finish dominating win by the Rams. They are the second best team in the National Football League. And at number 1, saying where they're at a week ago, the defending Super Bowl champions, Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are the best team in the National Football League, and here is why. So for Philadelphia, listen, I said it to start the show. They are the weirdest great team I've ever seen in sports. The offense is hit or miss. We really don't like the play calling that much, but the defense has gotten its footing after a rough start this year. Saquon Barkley, not close to the player he was last year, and yet you look up, you're like, they're 7-2. Receiver is disgruntled with the quarterback, maybe vice versa. They're going to roll to the NFC East. They might very well get the 1 seed again. So if the road to Super Bowl 60 has to go through Philadelphia, bad news for the rest of the conference that is really, really good from top to bottom, having to go on the road, to Lincoln Financial Field, crazy fan base and atmosphere and all of it. Listen, Jalen Hurts, I've said it all year. Like, I get it. The numbers aren't going to just, pop out like crazy. But this year, 21 total touchdowns to 2 interceptions on the season. He's certainly by no means in like the top 3 for MVP, but you cannot list 10 players that you think should be in the MVP conversation and his name not come up. With the running game inconsistency, with the defensive inconsistencies, with the limitations of offensive play caller, with A.J. Brown in his ear all the time, and Philadelphia's 7-2. And they're finding ways to win. Close games on the road at Lambeau, off a bye. That was an impressive win for the Philadelphia Eagles. They are the best team in the National Football League. I'm not going to punish Philadelphia, a defending champion that's off to a hot start, and finding ways to win it by virtue of the clutch gene of their quarterback. I'm not going to punish them if I didn't do the same, with the Kansas City Chiefs last year. Now, KC's a dynasty. Philly, maybe they can become a dynasty, but they're not there yet. But consistency is consistency. I've got the Eagles number 1. Go and put up the list. My top 10 teams of the league. Again, you see right there, what is that? 6 teams stay exactly where they're at. 1 team fell. 2 teams were unranked. 1 team moved up. All right, so not a lot of action compared to years past. This week on Bryson's Best 10, but from 10 to 1. Broncos at 10, Chargers at 9, Colts, Ravens. Yes, I have the Ravens in. I don't care about their record. I see what they've been doing as of late with Lamar. It's a different football team. Lions at 6, and then the top 5. Kansas City, New England, Seattle, Los Angeles Rams, and number 1, the defending Super Bowl champion, Philadelphia Eagles. Before we get out of here, I mentioned the Patriots. They got a game tomorrow against the New York Jets. New England in this game is favored minus 13.5. So I'll say this. I'm not going to, by no means am I saying the game's going to be close, because New England's clearly better than the Jets by a long shot. But the fact that Keyshawn Boutte, Ramondre Stevenson are out again on a short week, not a lot of time to put a real exotic game plan for either coach. for Mike Vrabel or for Aaron Glenn. The fact the Jets have won 2 games in a row, I get it's in Foxborough. 13 divisional games, short week, like that feels like a little too many points. I'm going to go obviously with New England to win the football game. I do think the Jets cover. I do. I could see this being 27-10 late. Justin Fields runs it in for, garbage time touchdown, at least in terms of the outcome of the game, not for bettors. Jets plus 13.5. Again, 13 is a little too many points for a short week on a Thursday night. If this game was on a Sunday, I'd probably take New England to cover, but it's not. Short week. And potential, listen, New England's being talked about as a Super Bowl contender. Maybe there's an element of, everyone's telling us how great we are, and maybe let their foot off the gas pedal a little bit early on the Jets, but then from there, second half, kind of cruise, and the Jets get a garbage time touchdown. And listen, maybe I'm expecting 27-17, 44 points. That would clear the over because it's a 42.5 point, over under. Maybe I'm assuming too much because of not just Thursday night football and what we saw last week with Denver and Denver and Vegas, but primetime games as of late, or at least this past week, were duds. It's Thursday night football, as boring of a game as you'll ever watch, 10-7. Sunday night football, Chargers, Steelers, is miserable for me, is miserable for the rest of the country unless you were Chargers fans. Boring defensive shootout. Or slugfest, I should say, with the Chargers kind of or not eke out, but kind of slowly take control as time goes on. And then the other night, another 10-7 game. That's scoreless at the half. First scoreless Monday Night Football game they said on the broadcast since 2009, Ravens and Browns. So pretty wild stuff. All right, that is all the time I have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube, as well as on X, Instagram, Twitch, and on Facebook. Appreciate everybody watching. As always, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that big red subscribe button right down there. It helps the channel grow exponentially. Subscribe to Carving It Up with Bryson Carver. Also subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here where you get your podcast, or right here where you're watching any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast. We've got some amazing content creators on there. Also, be sure to check out Friday morning, or Friday afternoon, rather, the Bryson Carver Show. That will be airing on 89.5 The Edge from noon to 2 Eastern Standard Time this Friday. Don't worry if you can't find it. It's on the TuneIn app. I'll put the link on my IG stories. Bryson Carver Show every Monday from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern, every Friday from noon to 2 Eastern Standard Time. Have a great week. We will see you guys on Friday. Going to react to, obviously, Thursday Night Football and any other happenings in the world of sports. Hopefully a Warriors win against the against the Spurs tonight. We could really use it. We could really use a big time win to get things back on track. Draymond, the Draymond quote concerned me, but it's going to be fine. We're in November. As Kendrick Lamar said, we gonna be all right. All right, see you guys on Friday. Have a great week. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. I'm serious. I need y'all to win this game, Warriors. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.